Welcome to Oneness and Wellness. This is the second program on shame, second part of the program on shame, and we're here with our guests, Marsha Reddington-Lawton and Lorraine Goldblum. And really, the first part was wonderful, so please tell us again a little bit about what we're talking about today.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's fascinating, isn't it? And of course, it's an issue that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So it's really an amazing experience to put shame under the microscope. But what I wanted to do was create something called the Issue Series, because I teach something called Vortex Healing. And it's about healing, and it's about awakening, and it's about bringing awareness to the places where we shut down. And of course, in healing, we're working on issues. And I wanted to do a really in-depth examination of what issues are. And the thing when you do your issues is you make your list, and most of us have a list of issues, let's be honest. If we're drawn to healing, we have a list of issues. Basically, an issue is anything that keeps you out of being present, as we've talked about. And it shows up in all sorts of different ways. It shows up in your mind, it shows up in your personality, it shows up in your body. And the thing that makes it really hard to work with, and the thing that makes our issues very hard to see, is that we identify with them, right? They keep us in an experience of separation, and we then believe that's what we are. For an example, we say that, we don't say, oh, I have anger impacting my system, creating tension in my shoulders and manifesting in my liver. We say, I am angry. Right? We don't say, oh, I have a depression that's affecting my relationships and making me tired and helping me lose my appetite. We say, I am depressed. We experience our issues as ourselves to a certain degree. So how do you work with that, right? How do you work with that? And the first step to that is, first and foremost, is to recognize an issue for what it is, which is an experience, but it's not the truth of what you are.
So it's how you say it, too. So in other words, saying, I am angry, you say, I have an issue with anger.
Exactly, and if you can recognize that, to me that says you already have some space in it. It means instead of being here where you're experiencing it as yourself, it's here, and maybe it's in your face, and maybe it's very uncomfortable, but you can work with that. You can say, I have an issue with anger, and I'm experiencing it this way, but it's not the truth of what I am. And so that's a whole different relationship with that experience, and then it's workable. So the big part of issues, the first step is just calling them for what they are. And that's why in making my list of issues, I thought a great one to start with is shame, because I think it's the hardest of the issues I can think of to call it for what it is. Because as we were talking about before, it manifests in so many different ways that we don't even recognize it.
What hides behind shame?
What hides behind shame? I think shame hides behind everything else.
Okay, so, and what are all the things that it hides behind?
It hides behind anger, it hides behind insecurity, it hides behind loss. You know, if you have this fundamental belief, this fundamental understanding that you are separate and not worthy of being loved, which is kind of what shame is about. It's like not believing that you're worthy of connecting. Well, then you have a reaction to that, and that's resentment and anger and hurt and loss and all of those other things. And then the ways that we compensate for that by trying to be perfect, by trying to manipulate, by trying to hide that, by all these other behaviors that come out of that fundamental thing, it's very easy to get distracted with all these other feelings, issues, concerns. But it takes a lot of courage, as we were talking about, to sit down and say, okay, what's really going on here?
Would you say another way of looking at that is looking at our lives where we experience ourselves as being disempowered?
Absolutely.
And that when we follow where we are disempowered, we go down the path if we continue on the issue of shame and self-judgment.
Yeah, and I think you can get at it through there, or many other ways. You know, we could follow our anger, we could follow our insecurity, we can follow our resentment, we can follow our loneliness. we can follow a lot of things to this fundamental sense that we are disconnected, which is never actually true. But if we believe it and we don't believe that we're worthy of being connected,
How about
everything else.
impatience?
So absolutely. It can be, I think it's different things for different people, which is why it's so insidious. But another way that I like to sort of take a look at issues is how they, not only how are they keeping me present out of this particular moment, but how do they affect me and my behavior and my relationships in the past? You know, where am I right now? Where do I feel it in my body? What is the tension that's created? And then what am I afraid they're going to do to me in the future? What am I afraid is going to happen to me as a result of not feeling worthy or anger and all of that? It's just another kind of language. I didn't make that up. Someone really smart made that up. I can't remember where I got that from, whether it was Eckhart Tolle, but it was an awakening teacher who was basically trying to bring presence and understanding to the different ways that we hold ourselves apart and we experience ourselves as separate. But it's an interesting way. What are we afraid of is going to happen?
Yeah,
You know?
that's a good one.
And we were talking during break, someone offered, if you don't mind saying that again, if you can be heard about people's regrets.
Yes. Did you want me to pick that?
Yes.
Would you, please, if you don't mind?
I work in hospice, and one of the biggest regrets that everyone has when they're in their last moments of life is that they didn't live their truest self.
Yeah.
They weren't authentically who they really wanted to be or who they really were.
Right.
They were living someone else's life.
That's right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
they weren't true to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
everyone's regret.
It is. I think if there's one regret, and looking back on how this issue has held me back in the past, absolutely. How can you be your true self if you're always compensating for what you don't feel is good enough? And I was talking about the projections, the image that we try to put forth to meet the world. And when we do that, we're not actually meeting the world in an authentic way.
I'm thinking about that comment, and hospice. And so, I wouldn't imagine that it's all elderly people that are passing. It's younger people too. But I think as you get older, I think you have to look at the times that people grow. I think about my mother when she was passing, and she had lots of regrets. And she was able to voice them before she passed, which was really a good thing. But it was the time, what was expected of a woman? What was she allowed to do? She didn't get her license till my father passed away. And then she was 71 and she got her license and drove. It's like, that was the time then.
Yeah.
I mean, but even though we're living in a different time, I would imagine that younger people too have the same.
They do. And sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
The regret.
The regret, always not living their full potential, but even as a young person, they. I'm sorry, I just lost my.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and I had this experience, an extraordinarily humbling experience, where I was in training to get my yoga certification. I have a background as a personal trainer, and I like bodies, and I was doing a practice practical, which means I was sort of rehearsing the practical exam, and I went up in front of the class, and I was leading the class in a little asana practice. And I was feeling pretty good about myself because technically I kind of knew my stuff and I like working with people and all of that. And I did my thing and I got the feedback. And what the instructors basically said, they said, well, Lorraine, you really know your stuff, but you just don't seem like you care. You're not connecting. You seem more interested in showing off what you know than actually connecting with your people. And that really hit me hard because, well, first and foremost, she was absolutely right. But it wasn't from a place of not connecting. It was from this deep insecurity that created a wall. And so here I was trying to compensate and just so and not regretting. And I realized when she said that, I didn't just do that in that particular instance. I'd like to say, oh, I was just nervous in the moment. But no, I actually did that throughout all of my life. And that regret that you're talking about, I realized how that wall of insecurity cut me off from deeper levels of relationship in my clients.
And actually, that's what I had wanted to say, is that what is the most important thing for you? And as it was when I went through the training in hospice, we had to go through this exercise of, given a dire diagnosis and going through the stages that, okay, you're coming to the end of your life.
Yeah.
You write all the things that you do in life, what is important to you right now, what is important to you as you get closer and closer to the end, and what is left, what is really important to you. And we don't really touch on what's really important in our lives. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's another thing in not being true to yourself, not
Absolutely.
living your authentic life,
Right.
is when you find out what's really important in your life.
Yeah.
Who are the people that are really important to your life?
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautifully said. And to me, it's about presence, because our issues, keep us out of being present, and we're really present with everyone. Well, then that's complete. It has all the love that you're looking for. It has the caring. It has the room for the sharing. But if you're negotiating through your issues and your separation consciousness, all of that, that's all shut down. So to me, the most important thing is being able to be present and not feel separate from all of that. That's why we work on our issues, because issues are designed to keep us out of that. And just seeing it for what it is begins the transformation.
But isn't shame also, or any of our issues, also the guidepost to say, you might want to look here. Hello, you might want to look here, because this is where you're not empowered. This is where you might have given up your power, or where you're giving up your power now. So sometimes we run away from Pandora's box, but when we're really, really clever, we actually run to it. And that's what I hear you talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that courage to recognize an issue for what it is. If an issue really holds us, we don't even know we have it. That's just the way we are. That's just the world as it is. And I know on other shows I've talked about my issue of loss and how I just I experienced myself as a melancholy person. That's just the way I am, which means you're so identified with something, you don't even see it as an issue. You haven't gotten to the stage of I have loss as an issue. You're still in the I am this, and so you don't think to work on it. So the first thing is to see it and call it as an issue. I'm actually not a melancholy person, but I do have an issue of loss. That is something I've worked with and continue to work on that has affected that. It's completely different. And the moment I recognize that as an issue and not who I was, my world changed.
I was just going to say, everything must change. Hold that. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Think about, to our viewing audience, think about, you heard about regret too. You have life. What would you like to do now in your life to be that authentic person? We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Lorraine Goldblum, and if you're interested in learning more about Vortex Healing, you can check out the main Vortex Healing website at vortexhealing.org, or you can check out my website, lorrainegoldblum.com, for classes and registration in this area.
Welcome back to the program. We're here with Masha and Lorraine, and I'm going to turn it over to Lorraine. She's going to kind of talk a little bit about, kind of wrap up what we've been talking about, shame.
Shame, yes, because we've been talking a lot about shame and putting it under a microscope and sharing what it's about. And it's really important, but then of course this leads to, what do we do about it? How do we address it now that we have the courage to realize that we have it, where do we go from that? And someone asked during break, well, how do you feel safe in doing that, and what is the context that you can work in? And I think that the first step is really just about how do you feel safe in dealing with an issue about shame, because you can't bring something to the light. You can't share if you feel in danger of being ridiculed, dismissed, or something like that. So whatever your life is, however your system works, whatever therapy or healing modality that you use, it's very important that you feel safe in it. You know, even if it's coffee with a friend, you want to be sure that friend is not going to judge you. You want to be sure that that friend is not there to criticize you or belittle you. If you're really going to, you know, so I think that's the important, you know, first step. In vortex healing, you know, is a healing modality. It's an energy that you channel and you work with on any kind of issues in yourself or in someone else. But it's not just working with different kinds of energies, it's working with divine consciousness, divine presence. So as the energy is sort of releasing the conditioning where the issue of shame shows up in the body and the energy system, the tension, where it shows up in the chakras and pathways and all this. This divine consciousness comes in and addresses that place where we identify. That's what we were talking about, that place where I am afraid, I am angry, I am. That identification, the divine consciousness comes in and meets that and wakes it up out of the story. Right? And there's nothing safer than divine consciousness.
I understand that.
Right.
What about someone who has no understanding of divine consciousness?
That's okay.
Of divinity?
If you have a friend, if you have love in your life, you have an understanding of divinity.
Okay. That
All right?
breaks
So
it down.
whatever form that takes for you, whatever that place that you can be met in unconditional love, be it coffee with a friend, be it therapist, be your cat, whatever that is, you bring that issue to that, meet it with love, and there begins the transformation. You know,
Great.
it's wonderful we have tools to take it even further, but that's really where it begins. Yeah.
Really, from your heart.
From your heart, yeah.
I get
And
it.
then because issues are so complicated, you know, they show up, you know, as physical tension, they show up in all the pathways and stuff. It's wonderful that we have tools in vortex healing to really go in and seek that out and release that from the body and the system. Because seeing it for what it is the most important part. It's the beginning of the transformation, but you can keep going. You can keep going over the years. I've talked about my issue of loss, and that moment of recognizing it was the important first step. But as the years go by, I realize, oh, that's a different level of it I didn't realize I had. Oh, now 5 years later, that's a different level of it I didn't realize, and we just keep going.
Well, I think you're saying, oh, but I think one of the things we all relate to is aha. You know those aha moments?
Yes, yeah.
That everything becomes clearer.
Yeah.
And there's more freedom, there's more options, there's more comfort in it.
Yeah.
For me, what you're talking about is really saying, I want more ahas in my life. And I'm willing to go through the walls or the limitations in order to get through. The real reason is to get to those ahas.
Yeah.
And we've all had them.
Yeah.
So we already know what you're talking about. It's
Yeah.
that you are telling us and sharing with us in a much more dynamic way how to bring that into our lives.
Right. Because an aha is a realization, isn't it? You know, that's where, you know, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that before, and it doesn't have to be that way going forward. Like realizing the wall I created from my own insecurity. I didn't have vortex healing at the time. All I had was an awareness that I did that, and a willingness and a desire not to do that anymore. I really didn't want to be like that. I really cared about the people I was working with, and I had to find another way. So you just moment by moment, breath by breath, intention by intention, you try to meet that, and you do better.
You know, it's so, your example of the yoga.
Yeah.
You know, I practice yoga, and
It's humbling, right?
Downward facing dog definitely does it for me. Anyway, the yoga teacher that is usually there has been on vacation, and she is like, she's got that personal, da-da. She sings the song if she's doing something. If she likes the words to it, she'll start singing it, and she just is natural.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? And then so someone took her place, and this woman was like, I said, don't come near me. I'm saying to myself, don't come near me, and start to move my body around, because it was all, this is the way we do it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, it was all,
Yeah.
it was so different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't so much the practice, it
Yeah.
was her
Right.
presence.
Right. Well, I think what you're pointing to is something that's really crucial, is the joy.
Yeah.
No, the joy is the recognition of grace. So this one instructor had a joy in what she was doing.
Absolutely.
And shared that and met people in that. And that's very hard to do when you have an issue like shame that shuts you down. And then so there is a joy even going after our issues. It sounds a little twisted, and maybe not everyone's into that the way that I am, but to look at something and to say, okay, I've done this, it doesn't have to be that way anymore, you know, but you need, coming back to this point of safety, if you don't have some kind of environment where you can't talk about that, share that, shine a light on it with energy and consciousness and love, you don't feel safe enough to make the change, because you can't imagine what you would be like without shame, and we cling to what's familiar. The joy is the recognition of grace and flowing. There's relaxation in joy and grace, and there's tension in our issues. So it's hard, but we can do
It
it.
is hard. We can do it.
We
Yes,
do it.
We can do it. Remember that. It's possible. All things are possible.
And when we think about all the things we have accomplished in life, and every time we fell down, we stood up again, we've had that experience. We're just talking about saying, okay, what do I want to take on next so I can create more freedom?
Yeah.
We all know
Yeah.
on some level from our life experiences what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
You guys are brilliant.
Yeah. And I know I have my big projects, you know, like, all right, we're going to take on this, I'm going to take this through, da, 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 da. And then some days that goes easy, I'm feeling good about it, and then some days are very hard, and all I can say is, okay, moment to moment, in this conversation coming up, I'm just going to put whatever that is down, my own insecurity, my own shame, and just listen to what's going on and try to share this moment with my husband, with my student, with my cat, you know, just bring that presence back. You know, can I just put this down enough for this moment of love and, you know, unconditional presence? And that's how we work. If we got nothing else, we can moment by moment, just a willingness to put that down and be present. And then we recognize how our issues get in the way, but we always come back to it.
I brought this in today. Living in the moment could be the meaning of life.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Yeah.
Anyway, how would you like to wrap this up today?
Well, really just to say thank you, because this is so exciting to me, to be able to do this and to create this, this series to sort of share and remember how we all relate, you know, especially an issue like shame. It keeps us so isolated, and we think we're the only ones struggling with it. So
Right.
it's wonderful to actually put this out there in this kind of format to do that, and I encourage everyone to do the same in whatever that looks like, you know, in your lives. So just to say, you know, thank you for that, and you know, let's go forward. Let's do more.
She's encouraging you, our viewing audience. She's giving you good information and encouragement. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you all.